I remember going through the crowd on the way out. I don't remember leaving the door. I have a fade, glimpse of walking down the path toward my car. And then the next thing I remember, I was out of my body in the white light, looking down at my body. The car was smashed. If you were to look at it, you would have assumed the person died in there.
Today's guest is Laurence Brock. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Let's just jump into it. Give me an idea of what life was like before your experience.
So I was living in Colorado in the United States, working in a restaurant, living kind of a partying lifestyle. It was good. I liked it. And I often think we would hide these little 7-ounce Michelobes underneath the counter. We were behind and bend down and drink them, and you could actually smoke joints. That was when pot was totally illegal, but there were these big fans there. That was just to give you an idea of where my head was at.
What was your beliefs then?
My beliefs, that's a good question. It's not like I didn't believe in God, but it was an important part of my life. And, I still am a sci-fi geek, I guess you could say. So certain things I've seen, and I did have some mystical experiences before my near-death experience. I just kind of ignored them. And even thinking back,
Can we talk about those?
Yes, probably the biggest one is I saw my grandfather when I went to see a movie in Manhattan. And it was a little while after he passed away. And I was sitting in the 10th row off to the right as you face the screen. And I saw this person sitting in the middle in the very front from the back who looked like my grandfather. And he was a unique guy because he was really big, very tall, and he had hair kind of like mine, which wasn't that in style back then. And the guy, had this really nice suit on, and I was so sure it was my grandfather. But I did walk around to the front and I saw him, and it was him. And he looked as solid as a real person. I just knew he had passed away. I didn't say anything to him. Now I'd go over and try to talk to him. But so that was one thing. When I was little, I would just see things here and there. And again, I kind of thought everyone was like that, really, and didn't make that big of a difference. I guess some of it is just how comfortable I was with that. I read Herman Hesse books, I read Autobiography of a Yogi, but never really thought that would apply directly to me, really. So I was living in Colorado. I came back to the Northeast to visit my parents who lived in Rye Brook, New York. And my roommate in Colorado was a hometown friend. So we drove back together. We found out about a party and went to it. He had a really nice 280Z that we drove back in. I took my mom's little Ford Bobcat, which was a small car. Nowadays, there's so many small cars. Back then, there wasn't quite so many. We were drinking, smoking pot, and I kind of came up with a plan, actually, more so I could leave my car there and go back and talk to the girl who was having the party. So I had my friend drive me back to my parents' house, staying there visiting. And almost back to my parents' house, I remembered that my sister needed to use my mom's car for work the next day. So I had my friend drive me back to the party. The party was really happening. I still remember it was crowded. There was music playing. And so I kind of pushed my way through and told the girl I was taking my car. I remember going through the crowd on the way out. I don't remember leaving the door. I have a fade, glimpse of walking down the path toward my car. And then the next thing I remember, I was out of my body in the white light, looking down at my body. The car was smashed. If you were to look at it, you would have assumed the person died in there. My experience was more of a feeling. And when I go to describe it, my words always do not do it justice, but I've learned how to, because it was a feeling of, it was like everything was good, but it was kind of like I knew all the answers, but there were no questions. It was being part of this thing that was just felt so nice. I don't know. I could describe it as love, but I guess that's what it was. Love and peace and just this feeling like things were good.
It's an understatement.
Yeah,
right.
It is an understatement. And when I talk about it and let that feeling happen, then people seem to understand on the feeling level. I don't know how long I was there, but I could see I mean, if you look, I still have a scar that goes back. My head was cracked open and it seemed fine with me. There was a police officer crouching over me. Behind me, there was this big circle of white with a full silhouette of what I realized was a man because it spoke to me. And then there was other light radiating off of that being. And it said, "You have to go back. Your father wants you to stay." I knew the father was God, not my physical father, and in the spirit that everything is good on everywhere all the time kind of thing, that I went back into my body and came to 3 days later in the hospital. I was unconscious for a few days. And when I came to, it wasn't like I knew something happened, but I didn't know what to think of it. I also was basically, I'm going to go back to Colorado and start working in the restaurant. It wasn't like I was thinking, and it wasn't on TV like it is now. So it took me a while to get to the point where I understood, or even now I don't fully understand, but to understand enough to think I know, basically.
What followed that? What came about?
Basically, so one thing that happened, I did notice when I would touch someone, even to shake their hand or any way, my hands would become warm almost instantly. Again, I did not know what to think of that. My intuition increased, but I was always very intuitive. Something that definitely started happening, I started meeting people that were interested in spiritual things that I was not aware of before that in my life. So I went back out to Colorado. My life, I did like working in the restaurant, but it wasn't that fulfilling. Part of what I liked about it was almost, I was a total jock as a kid. It was almost like a sport. Like, at a certain time, all of a sudden you'd have to start rushing. The restaurant would be packed, cooking meals, and like I said, drinking beer and smoking pot and just having fun, but it didn't feel that fulfilling. I had applied to go to the University of Colorado in Boulder and was all set on doing that when my mom kind of convinced me and bribed me. She bought me a new Jeep to come back and go into business, into my dad's electrical contracting business. Something that happened that changed my life, perhaps as much as my near death experience, is one day I was in my apartment and someone knocked on the door and I got up to answer it. And it was a woman who said to me, "The sister of a friend of yours from Colorado." And I kind of knew who she was right away because her face looked similar. Um, and my sister told me some interesting things about you. And then she said right away, "I know someone who teaches about what happens after we die, and I want to introduce you to him." And it was like this woman just showed up and introduced me to my first spiritual teacher. I wasn't even thinking about that I died. I just knew something happened.
Is that something you kept to yourself, or were you willing to share what happened, or did you even understand what happened?
I didn't understand. I shared it with very few people, partially because after sharing it with some people, they just looked at me like I was crazy, basically. And it took some years. But meanwhile, these healing abilities were brewing inside of me, and certain things happened where I just helped people in the beginning without even trying or even thinking that. I mean, one thing that happened was my next door neighbors. It was a time when everyone kind of knew everyone in the neighborhood, and my family was very close with their family. So there was someone my age, the father, and I even knew their grandfather, and they knew my grandparents and everything. It was a family thing. So one day, the father said to me that his father was about to pass away, like any moment. And I don't even know what came over me because I said, "I'll pray for him." And part of me was being sarcastic, and something in me was prompting me to do it. So, but I did pray for him, and I felt something happen. I felt, and I don't know it just felt like this energy comes in and opens up. And then the next time I saw the father was a few days later. He said to me, "Something must have happened when you prayed," because he told me his father, so my friend's grandfather, got better and actually ended up living about 6 months longer. So, but some other things like that happened where I don't know. I look back, I'm kind of naive about things, and had some interest and learned about it, but still really embracing what happened took some years.
Have you had any more experiences since then?
Yeah, I've had hundreds because some years later, so I was in the electrical contracting business for a while and I just got kind of sick of it. Some of the work was very rewarding and part of it was really good, but there was a lot of it that was arguing about money all the time and people blaming each other. Like you go on a job and something went wrong, everyone's trying to blame someone else. And I just realized I was kind of sick of that. So I started a healing practice And since then, but still, sometimes it's still a little surprising because it is kind of miraculous what happens. But I had some experiences where I just had to realize that's what I am and that's what I do. But it took a while. Now, most of the time, I'm good with it.
I ask you, how do you deal with skeptics?
Well, first of all, I remember like nowadays, way less, way more people are aware of this kind of thing, partially because of TV shows and movies. I mean, the Vampire Diaries seem to have a big effect on people being open to spiritual things. So my daughter's 20, but even when she was young, everyone seemed to know about it. I like to watch sitcoms sometimes out of nowhere. On a sitcom, someone will talk about a near death experience or some spiritual experience they had. So at least people aren't looking at me like I'm crazy. If they're skeptical, it's part of what it is. So I'm fine with it because I feel very comfortable now in what I do. It used to bother me. Some people have issue that I make money from doing this. That used to bother me too. But people are what they are.
Everyone thinks a book's gonna make you a millionaire, right?
Yeah.
But that's not the case. Can we talk about your book? You have a book?
Yes.
You have two books.
I have two books. The first one was actually, so I have a doctorate in spiritual science, as it says there. The first book for my doctoral paper, I developed a breathing exercise. And so I basically just kind of simplified my doctoral paper a little bit and took out some of the requirements for the school that might not make sense to the normal person who's not in the school and published that. My second book came out about a month ago, and that's about my near death experience and some of the really cool spiritual experiences I've had. Well, basically for the first 10 years after that.
Can you tell us what those books are called?
Yes, I can. I'll show you. I have this autobiography of a healer, that near death to the power of love.
That's available on Amazon.
It's yes.
And the other one?
The other one is called An Air of Well-Being, the L breathing method. So that's the name of my breathing technique, the L breathing method. In the new book, there's a section to help people meditate better, do journal writing, and there's a manifesting technique in there that can really help people. And that there's my story. I ended up studying with that person who the woman said teaches about death for about 10 years. And he did some really amazing mystical things too. So yeah, there's some of the things he did. So this was a Sufi sheikh, and the Sufis are the mystical sect of the Islamic religion. And he was a Mevlevi dervish, and the Mevlevi dervishes follow the teachings of Jalaluddin Rumi, the poet that a lot of people know about these days. But he wrote volumes of books that most people see little snippets of it and they seem like love poems, but he was writing it about his relationship to God and his relationship to his teacher that he loved so much. But it was really beautiful. And they have a special connection to roses. So there's some magical things he did with roses. One was he did a relationship blessing on me and my girlfriend at the time, where he told me to go get 9 closed roses, and I did, and get a bowl of water. And in this ceremony, basically, he had us put our hands like this, and he put one rose in my hand and said, one is for what, I don't even remember what each number means, but then he had me drop it into her hand, and he added another one saying 2 is for whatever, and 3 is for the Trinity, or, back and forth. And at the end, there were 9 roses in my hands. I let them go, and he had put the bowl of water below me. And as they were falling, the roses bloomed, and the room filled up with the fragrance, a beautiful fragrance of roses. Really cool and magical. So my book ends when I met the person who I considered my real spiritual teacher. So the Sufi sheikh would say a lot, he's not my real teacher, but I could hang around him in the meanwhile. So when who I consider my real teacher passed away, that night he came to me in my dreams and basically said to me, now you're going to have to move up a level. This was like 10 years ago. Part of me is like, I'm very focused on my spiritual work, but sometimes I feel, there's no way, it's ongoing. So recently I had this really big revelation, and it's something I kind of knew before, but basically that I can hand things over to God and I don't need to worry about them. I don't need to save people. In my healing work, I like to help people, but I don't need to save them in that way. And it was really just such a relief. Even yesterday or the day before, my daughter said to me, "Wow, you seem so much happier, the last month." And I said, "Yeah," and I explained to her. But it was, I mean, it sounds really simple, but it's really like when I'm thinking about what's going on in my day, I don't need to figure out how it's going to go well. I need to figure out what I'm going to do, and then it's like I can hand it over to God. So something happened maybe 6 months ago. So when I work with people, there's energy that comes in, and usually it varies with each person a certain amount. Then all of a sudden, for a while, there was this, it's kind of like a cloud of white light that seemed to come during every session to the point where I was curious about what it was. And I mean, I'm always a little curious, but I know my mind, if I start thinking about it too much, it kind of gets in the way of the connection. So this one was there for long enough where I go, wow, this is the part of me or connected to me as opposed to just coming in for my clients. And so, I was kind of meditating on it and discovered it was Archangel Uriel. And this was nice because even I say it now, it's just this very soft, really loving, soft energy. But then it, during this time of this great like transformation, now every word I say seems too grand or doesn't describe it enough. All of a sudden, there was this ball of like almost tan, yellowish, reddish light, and it seemed like there's a bunch of beings there that have been coming present. And even I say this, it sounds so ridiculous, but then it's like, oh, this is, and see, I start to feel it. I kind of want to close my eyes and just go there. And then, so it's like a bunch. So my understanding is Archangel Uriel, Archangel Gabriel, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. And then there's other, because once in a while when I'm working, it looks like whether it's an angel or a healing master kind of comes out and goes to the person specifically. I haven't gotten any other names besides those, but somehow this is connected to finishing my book because it was such a cathartic thing to really get all those stories out on paper. And but it had to do with the thing my teacher told me 10 years ago. And part of me is thinking, man, how come it took me so long? I just have been feeling much happier. And I thought I was happy before, but now I just feel really happy all the time. It's great.
Are you working on another book?
I am. I'm actually working on a few books, but one of them is telling my story starting where this one ended. So I'm trying to figure out how to actually do that. Some of it is just telling little stories, and then I'll figure out how to put it together. But that's been so just turned 71, so the other book ends in my early 30s, so it's a lot of years. But yeah, I've just had, I mean, it's really a blessing. Even the way I describe it, part of me thinks it's such BS, but I know that what I do helps people, and that part seems like real proof because the thing I was describing about the archangels, like, I'm seeing this image, but there's no way to prove it. But when I do that and people feel it, like I'm thinking of one of my clients a few times after this started happening at the end of the session, she just was, oh my God. Like you could see her, her eyes were so bright, her smile was so big, she was just really getting it.
How do you feel? Because some people would label, if that happened 500 years ago, it'd be witchcraft, right?
Yeah.
And then you'd be burned at the stake.
Well, it's again a lot because of TV. It's not like that, but there was it. I mean, I had some friends I mentioned this to, and that was the end of my friendship. Some really good friends, but nowadays it's very different. When people say, "How do you know it was real?" There's no way to prove it. That's the thing. But like I said, I help people. Sometimes I work with people. They have a physical ailment, and it gets done. It gets healed like in 1 second. Or sometimes, not too long ago, I got a text from this woman say, the energy shifted. I want to make another appointment and I'm walking. I haven't walked in 8 years. So this woman was homebound for a long time. And I remember her session. I don't think anything physical happened then, but I remember it is like the person's right there. I think this woman lives in Utah and I could tell there was a lot of yellow energy around her. And she was really happy and much lighter at the end of the session. And I remember in my mind thinking, oh, good, her healing process just started. But obviously, shortly after that, she got up and started walking. She didn't tell me exactly when, but it was to where she was walking like an hour every day. She was so happy she could go to the supermarket. She had to hold on to the cart, but she could go and she wasn't locked up in her house all the time. So that was pretty cool.
Step one.
Yeah.
and then like another step.
Yeah.
I want to ask a couple questions I ask everyone.
Okay.
What is your definition of the meaning of life?
I would have said before this new thing that part of it is to love ourselves. And I think that's really important. And then, how can you be loving yourself in relation to things that are not going your way? I don't know. Again, it sounds to me kind of silly, but this thing of turning things over to God and trusting that things will work out how they're supposed to work out, which to me sounds so cliche-ish that I don't even want to say it. I don't know how else to say it, but it is this wonderful thing. And so when I kind of connect into it over here, I start to feel tingling in my hands. But part of it is when I connect into that, then the answer to your question, it doesn't matter because the spirit part just opens up like this and there's joy there. And it's like, oh, this is a great thing. And can I go through life doing that most of the time? And I would say that's it. But I really love my daughter, so it would be easy to say loving her is the purpose of life for me. But I think that's kind of close to that loving. But I think it's with yourself and accepting who you are, understanding that every aspect of you has some value in it, that there's something of great value in everybody. It's easy to see what I do as a spiritual thing, but being a parent is very spiritual. Anything, making good videos or, whatever it is.
If you had one message for the world, what would it be?
I would say that you're awesome and love yourself, and then to meditate and journal write, to learn how to connect to that more and to connect to that love that's present. And it takes work. Some people seem to do it naturally, but I think it mostly takes work. And I do journal writing in the morning, and I was realizing today I could do better. And that happens a lot of days. And some days I'm doing better and connected into that joy. Some days I'm just caught up in the world. And so this morning I just realized I was focusing on my day in a way that felt worried. And I'm like, I'm not even doing anything to worry about. So it's like, okay, I'm going to connect. So it's the worry part seems to be on the left side. The spiritual part seems to be on the right side. So for me, some of it is just turn my head that way and connect into that energy and trust that God's source, whatever you call that, is there to lift us and love us and care about us.
And how can people reach out to you?
My website is laurencebrock.com. That's the best way. Everything, my YouTube's on there. I have TikTok, and there's ways to make appointments on there. There's ways to buy my book. Yeah, the biggest thing is to trust there's something really cool and awesome in you and to express that and don't try to think about it too much because our mind will, be logical and then it doesn't help that much. So my she's really smart. So in her freshman year of college, she got a 99 and 100 on the final for calculus. So her overall grade was 99. I say it's amazing. And she says, no, everyone did well. And then she goes, but no one uses calculus. But she's so smart and she doesn't know what she wants to do. And I said, just trust what you're doing. Like what gets your mojo going? What makes you smile? What makes you feel good? Good in a way of being healthy and things like that, and follow your heart. I think that's the way to do it.
I agree. Follow your heart. Follow your passions. Well, I want to thank you for accepting my invite and
Yeah, it
coming
was
on
nice.
here.
I trust my feeling. I had a good feeling about you.
Hey guys, thanks for joining me on the Light You Are podcast. If you want to support this channel, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification button so you never miss an episode. If you haven't checked out my children's book, The Light You Are, it's available only on Amazon. We're all just trying to remember who we are, the light we are.